Lots more people arriving now. So we're going to be starting in just under a minute for zero touch invoice processing. So we have a team here from Tungsten from Ephesoft in several countries presenting this afternoon, and lots of people arriving now as we just passed the hour. So we're going to get started in a second. So just a little bit of housekeeping. My name's Steve Emmets. I'm from Tungsten Network. And while we go through the presentation today, you'll be able to submit questions via the question and answer window. You will be muted when you arrive, and you'll stay on mute all the way through, but you can make comments in the chat window, and you can ask questions through the Q&A window. So good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Zero Touch Invoice Processing, a presentation from Tungsten Network and Ephesoft. And we're going to just tell you who the presenters are in just a second. So here's our agenda: a quick welcome and introductions from myself. And I'm going to take you through some of the key trends in the industry affecting this area. I'm going to be handing over to Dan from Ephesoft to talk about OCR ingestion. Diane will be walking us through zero touch processing. Following on that, we will have Rayhan, who will be actually doing a live demo of zero touch processing. We'll then go into a Q&A, and then we'll have a summary by Dan at the end. So here are the people that are going to be entertaining you this afternoon. So Dan Champ is the National Channel Manager at Ephesoft. I'm the VP of Enterprise at Tungsten. That's me, that's Steve. Diane is Director of Enterprise at Tungsten. Jason Bradford is a Solution Engineer, so he'll be helping out. And Rayhan Hashim is our Solution Architect, and he'll be doing the live demo today. So Tungsten and Ephesoft have been working together for about a decade. And together we bring together OCR ingestion and invoice processing and workflow. So I'm going to be kicking things off this afternoon with a very short presentation with a few key trends and lessons learned from the pandemic, and most importantly, stories from our customers. So we want to hear the voice of the customer and tell you what some of our customers have been experiencing under the pandemic, and how some of those trends are here to stay and some of those trends are really accelerating due to the COVID-19 pandemic. So let's take a look at the agenda for this section. I'm going to give you a little conversation context of what we're doing, and then I'm going to touch on 3 Gartner trends in digital transformation and innovation. We're going to be touching on 3 case studies briefly: Mondelez, Conagra, and Honda Logistics. So let's dive into that first trend. So the first trend is that we're seeing an acceleration to touchless processing. So the whole area of automation is gathering pace, and it's here to stay, even when the pandemic is over. And one of the key areas here is that finance teams have seen the real challenges when paper fails within the process. So we've seen a really big move away from paper. Adding to the challenge has been mail delays, not just in the US, but all over the world. And on top of that, the USPS is looking to move its SLAs out now to 5 to 10 days. So the challenge around moving paper around is actually going to get significantly worse. So if you look at some of the key industry research organizations, like Hackett, for example, the average time to process an AP invoice was just over 10 days, but it's well over 10 days now. So several additional days has been added into the time it takes from when an invoice is sent to when it actually appears in the buyer's system. And automation has been seen to be and if we move on to the first case study, what we can see here, if my memory serves me right, it is going to be Mondelez. I'm not sure if that was a hi.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if that was a connection issue.
Steve,
But
yeah, you're breaking up a bit. I'm sorry.
So just showing how technology can be a challenge under the pandemic as well. So Mondelez is one of our large customers in the US, and they currently, because they've got such a high level of straight-through processing, they're able to reach 100% by the end of this year. And if we move on to the second trend, self-service is becoming really, really important as well. So as remote operations require that 24/7 access and support, our suppliers really are looking to try and get information about where their invoices are and when they're going to get paid in a self-service mode. So for finance teams, this has become a real challenge. So we've seen a big increase in the number of queries that are coming into AP teams around, have my invoices been received and when am I going to get paid? Now, the good news here is if you set up the automated systems to let the suppliers get the information themselves, you can get some significant efficiencies here. So if we look at the next case study, is Conagra. So Conagra has been using invoice status service from Tungsten, which enables all of their suppliers to go into the portal and see exactly where their invoices are all the time. Now, it's been so successful for them to reduce the top 2 queries that they receive from their suppliers, they've actually added a chatbot to their system. So pretty much the top 10 reasons why their suppliers get in touch with the AP teams is now being self-service. This is a really big impact on reducing the queries for the AP team, freeing up their time to work on more value-added tasks. And the third trend, we're seeing a big push towards automated approvals. So by having a collaborative ecosystem through partnerships like Ephesoft and Tungsten, we're able to do straight through processing, but straight through to the approval system and the workflow, which we'll show today. What this means is visibility, transparency, and real-time reporting can be had all across the value chain of receiving the invoice all the way through to approval. And we've got a great case study for that. So if we look at Honda Logistics, they've been able to automate this to the point where they're now classifying their AP department as a profit center. So the cash flow visibility allows them to really get the best kind of discounts as well from their suppliers and has helped them improve their cash management. They're currently processing 120,000 invoices a year with only two members of staff being allocated to processing the invoices. Their AP team has been able to work on much more value-added tasks due to that time saving. And now I'm going to hand over to Dan and John.
Thanks, everyone. I don't know if the next slide is up there, Rayhan. There we go. Thanks so much. So before we jump into John and I introduce John a little bit further, I wanted to take you through some of the processes that Ephesoft goes through to do what we do best. What we see on the left-hand side on this document is all the capture methodologies that we can go through. Anything from scanners, MFPs, watch folders, faxes, emails, mobile ingestion, and even portals. As invoices become more and more complicated and we start dealing with more and more larger size companies, everybody seems to be moving to a portal nowadays, and logging in and downloading and doing all those other things is kind of a normal task. From there, we go into image processing. This is where some of our patented technology comes into play, and we use some AI and machine learning models in order to do the page separation, normalization, cleanup, OCR, ICR, OMR, and we're even getting into some handwriting analysis as well. From there, we compile this information from doing the whole page text OCR into a classification model. That classification model defines the documents for what they are, whether that's an invoice, a PO, it can be any number of things. Once it separates those, it creates start and end pages and then captures the middle pages and puts them into separate batch classes. From there, it moves on into extraction. Extraction then uses, again, AI machine learning models that we've developed to extract all of that metadata that you're looking for, whether that's an invoice number, a date, line items, totals, taxes, VAT taxes for people that are in Europe and all over the rest of the world. And then also doing database lookups. From there, we move into validation, or what people tend to call human in the loop. This is really where if a confidence level is really not high enough based on the machine learning model, a red or green box will show up. And from there, you will just have to go in and you'll have to do some modification. John will show you how to do that in his demo. But the idea here is to do that as little as possible. And as you're teaching the system and you're making modifications, that is the idea, is it for the confidence to go up and for it to get better. Hence zero touch processing, right? From there, then we then deliver to any number of repositories or iPaaS solutions, RPA, BPM, or what everybody is now calling hyperautomation. This can be done on premise, it can be hybrid, or it can be even in the cloud. Now what I'd like to do is hand it over to John Bradford. He is one of our super sales engineers over here, and he's going to take us through this demo.
Very good. Well, hey, thank you very much. Stop other people. I am going to share my screen. Share. All right. Well, thank you very much for attending today, folks. Show you a couple of things. So we have in our system, as Dan was explaining, we're able to ingest information from many, many different locations. As he was saying, email, from portals, from a number of them. And as was explained earlier, email and portals are becoming very, very prevalent. And our ability to grab the information from those can only help improve that processing, that straight through processing. In our demo today, we've received a couple of emails. The first one from Adam's office supply is actually a 2-page invoice. We've got page 1 and page 2, but they are actually 2 separate invoices in the same PDF. They're each have a little different invoice number up here in the right-hand corner. You'll also notice that there's you've got your invoice date, information like that. Our system is going to go through and locate this information and extract that information off of these invoices automatically. In our second email that we received, it's a completely different looking invoice. Things are in different locations. It's a different vendor. We have more line items. Things are just different. But the idea here is our system is intelligent enough and set up that it doesn't matter where the information is on the invoice, we're able to go out and locate that information, populate the information into the fields, and then pass that off to the downstream application, in this case, Tungsten workflow. Okay, so when these invoices come in, a knowledge worker basically is going to log in. Ephesoft is an entirely web-based hosted system, or web-based system. So as long as a user has the URL, the user has login credentials, they're able to get in and do their work. So they open up any of the most popular browsers, go to the URL, and log in. So when they come to their opening screen, they're going to be presented with the different things that they're able to do. Depending on what they do for a living with that company, they're going to have different options. For instance, they can go in and they can upload batches. Let's say that they received an email with an attachment that they need to process. Here, they can simply drop that attachment into the system for processing. We can actually do web-based scanners. If you're an administrator, you can go in and manage your batch classes, do some reporting, things of that nature. In our example here, we're simply going to go in as a knowledge worker, and we're going to process an invoice or a series of invoices, those 3 that came through. So they're going to come in here and log in. When they log in, they're going to be presented with their work. So we go in and we'll double click on this one. Now you'll notice we had talked a little bit about this earlier. We've got 3 different areas. Down the left-hand side, you're going to see green and red. Green indicates that everything was perfectly fine. Red indicates that there's an issue. So down the left-hand side, you have your thumbnails of the different invoices that have come in. In the middle, we have all the extracted information from those invoices. And on the right-hand side, we have the full-size picture of that invoice. If we go up here and we look at the first one, we'll notice that everything looks good. All the information was grabbed. If I click in the different fields, you can go over here and notice where it extracted the information. So there's the invoice number up there. Here's your amount down here for your tax, your total amount. So it extracted that information. We can actually go over and look at the table. Here's the table information. This information that was also extracted. So we have the quantity, the description, the unit price, the extended price. So we extracted all that information. We also extracted all that information at a high enough confidence level that the system said, everything's good, you don't need to help me out at all. If I go down to the third one, this is that PO invoice. So we also have different items that we extracted. The PO number, which is right here. The invoice number, which is up here. So once again, we extracted all this information automatically. The other bit of information that we gathered in here was the vendor number. Well, the vendor number actually is not on that invoice. How did we get that? Well, we have a connection in the back end to the vendor master database, which has all of the vendor information and allows it to access that and pull that information in simply by saying, okay, I see Appliance Pro, I see the address on here. Go out, ping that database, and bring back that information, including the vendor number, because the vendor number is going to be very important down the line to match up these invoices with the appropriate vendor. Once again, we have that table extraction. Here's all the information that was extracted from that table. If I click on it, it shows exactly where it was pulled. The other bit of information that we can do here, we can actually attach to your PO database. So if we need to, we can go in here and look at that line item matching. So we can see here on the left-hand side, here's the information that was actually extracted from the invoice. On the right-hand side is the information from the PO database. And you'll notice that it did match them up perfectly by the PO line, by the PO line number. So allowing us to make sure, yep, this invoice matches what we ordered, we're good to go. Now let's go to the one that had a problem. When we first came into the system, this is where we were brought immediately. We actually skipped the green ones and brought us right to the first issue. And basically what it's saying is the invoice date doesn't look quite right. I didn't get it confidently extracted. So help me out here. Well, we can look and see, yeah, it captured the right information, but it put a couple spaces in there, which our system doesn't like. So I'm actually going to delete it. And I can go over here and simply drag across that on the right-hand side and automatically populate that information. I did not have to type anything. I didn't have to do any of that, so I didn't have to worry about typing in the wrong information. We actually extracted that information off of that page automatically. So with that capability, you can reduce the number of clicks or the number of keystrokes, which will greatly reduce the number of errors that would be put through the system. Ultimately, what you hope is that the system is going to read all the information confidently every time so that the user doesn't even have to come in here and do anything. You get that true straight through processing. So once we get all the information in here, we're confident that everything is correct. We click on validate. Where are those extra spaces? We click on validate. And when I close this batch, it will then be sent to the next section, which is directly to the Tungsten workflow. We send that over automatically.
JB, there's a couple questions that came in, if I could.
Sure, go right ahead.
And let me just tell everyone, there's a wonderful number of participants on today's webinar, and there's a lot of questions coming in. We'll get to as many as we can, but I can't ask all of these questions, and we'll make sure that we follow up to everyone with all the answers after the webinar. One of the questions was being asked is, what are the languages that are supported?
We support, Dan, do you have that number off the top of your head? I'm trying to remember. It's in the hundreds of languages that we support. I don't have that number off of the top of my head, but we can absolutely get that for you.
Okay. And then also, is there an audit trail for who loaded the batches?
So yes, we have full reporting capabilities. So we keep track of everything that happens every step of the way in our database so that we're able to go through and manage all of that information along and present it in reports as necessary. So yes, we do.
Okay. And then some of these other questions are a little particular. So I think that what we'll do is we'll answer those separately after the webinar, if that's okay, everyone. But please go ahead and keep sending the questions in. I'll make sure that every question gets answered and everyone gets to see those answers. Okay.
Very good. Thank you.
Thanks,
And
JB.
Yep. I'll send this over to you, Diane. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So Rayhan, if we could go back to the deck. 1 second, everyone, as we switch presenters. There we go. So I just want to quickly introduce myself. And again, welcome everyone. I'm the automation specialist here at Tungsten Network. I kind of specialize in the workflow arena. I've been here quite a while now. And I want to just discuss some best practices and some major pain points when we're processing payables. And then I'm going to hand it over to Rayhan, who's our automation technical specialist, and he's going to give you a demo of the workflow tool itself. So again, keep those questions coming in. We'll try to answer as many as we can. Really do appreciate them. There's a lot of really good questions here. Let's go to the next slide. So for best practices, let's just talk about that for a moment. Your AP workflow should have the capability to process for you your PO invoices for both 2-way against POs and 3 ways against goods receipts for matching. Should be able to process non-PO invoices for automatic routing for approvals, do your GL coding if necessary, have real-time integration with your ERP system, and allow for complete visibility to your accruals as well. And it should also have a reporting tool to create reports for financial reporting purposes, as well as the ability to be able to very quickly find your invoices, the status of those invoices, and get all the detail that you need at the tip of your fingertips. Okay. So step 1 in the process was to eliminate the biggest, and eliminating those biggest pain points is getting the right data captured off the invoice immediately. So Tungsten partnered with Ephesoft to make that happen, and JB just showed us how efficient a good OCR tool can be. Step 2 in the process is to eliminate the biggest pain points in processing the invoice data. And that's where workflow tool comes into play. So best practices for payables is to only allow PO invoices from your suppliers. Now that's, of course, easier said than done. Tungsten does have some really large clients that have adopted the strategy, no PO, no pay, which because of their clout, they're able to do that. They're able to force their suppliers to adopt that mandate. However, many of our clients aren't able to do that. So there's always going to be non-POs to deal with as well. The goal is to receive as few possible non-POs and have efficient procedures and tools in place to deal with those invoices when they're received. So let's start talking about first straight through processing, because we did call this webinar zero touch processing. Straight through processing, also called zero touch processing, happens when the invoice to be processed is processed without any manual intervention whatsoever. Now, this greatly reduces the cost of your payables and typically can only be accomplished by an efficient invoice ingestion method, such as an intelligent OCR, and a workflow tool that can perform the 3-way match against the PO and the goods receipt. So let me point out a few of those pain points. Even if the invoice is read correctly and we successfully captured all the data fields, invoice handling and invoice exceptions are bound to happen. Invoice exceptions are one of the most time-consuming, costly issues that enterprise finance and the procurement departments face today. So once the invoice has been received, how do we know it's not a duplicate invoice? It's critical to have an automated invoice check that can confirm that the invoice hasn't been received previously. An automated system will have a real-time check with your ERP system to check invoice data to ensure this is a safe invoice to process. Then the next step in the process is the matching of the PO to the goods receipt. If this is still a manual step of your organization, this is one of those fundamental tasks that can be automated to reduce time and costs. So by automating the 3-way match against the PO and the goods receipt, valuable time can be spent by the FTE doing much more critical work for your organization. And sometimes approvals are required for POs. Say if the invoice is over a certain amount, before payment is made. This process of invoice distribution for approval should be completely automated. We're going to show you an example of that in just a few moments. Next, do you still post the invoice to the ERP manually after all the checks and balances are completed? There are many companies that still do that, which is a tremendous duplication of effort. An efficient workflow will automatically post the invoice to the ERP, which ensures that the invoice has been properly processed and the data entered is correct. And then lastly, the payment information should be brought back to the invoice data into the workflow, not just for reporting purposes, but it also makes sure that the invoice inquiries have all of the details from invoice receipt through payment. Now, these are some of the biggest pain points we hear from our clients before they automate the payables process, and that's what we help with. Then on the non-PO side, it has similar challenges, starting from ensuring that the invoice received is not a duplicate. Non-PO typically requires geocoding as well. So if the same invoice are charged to the same business units and accounts, we can automate the geocoding for that invoice. Next, approvals are almost always required for non-PO invoices, and the approval matrix can be quite complicated depending upon the business unit or company code, the amount of the invoice, any number of criteria needed to be taken into account for who approves that invoice. And this is a critical step in automating the process to ensure mistakes are not made. An AP workflow will route the invoice in the approval matrix required by the customer, and the invoice will not get paid until all approvals have been received. And then we want to make sure that the invoice is posted automatically to your ERP system. So lastly, payment information is brought back to the invoice detail for full visibility of the invoice from the time it was received through payment. So that is the entire procedure for automating both a PO as well as a non-PO invoice. Next slide. So let's go ahead and get to the demo. Rayhan's going to show those invoices that were processed via OCR. He's going to show both PO and non-PO processing, the real-time integration we have with SAP and JD Edwards, as well as the integrated reporting tool. Now, we're not going to show you the supplier portal today where your supplier can get the invoice status of their invoice real time, but we'd be happy to show you that at a future date. Rayhan, you'd like to take over with your demo?
Sure, absolutely. Thank you, Diane. So good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone on the call. Thank you so much for your time. My name is Rayhan Hashim, and I am actually logged in to the workflow application right now. If you take a second, in the upper right-hand corner, you'll see that I'm logged in as Annie. And just to set the stage, Annie is a AP clerk, a clerk that just likes to come in, review the invoices, approve them, reject them, and move on with her day. On the left-hand side, you'll see a navigation bar. This navigation bar stays static throughout the customer's journey. So if Annie at any time was lost within the application, she could click on any of these items and she can get to where she needs to be. Now, what I want to focus on right now are the 4 quadrants that you see in the middle of the workflow application. The first one in the upper left-hand corner is my top activities. I consider this as like my to-dos, right? These are things that Annie has to take action on, and she needs to take action on them soon. The next quadrant in the upper right-hand corner is the work items expiring today. So these are all the items that are expiring today. And if Annie had any, if she didn't take any action on them today, they would escalate to her manager. But since Annie is a pretty good employee, you can see that she doesn't have any items at the moment right now expiring. The bottom left-hand quadrant is actually my favorite quadrant. It's the today's activities. These are all the items that Annie has worked on. She's had a pretty busy day, as we can see, because sometimes we get so caught up in our day-to-day activity, we sometimes may think, what did I get accomplished today? Did I approve that invoice? Did I review that invoice? If Annie wanted to go back and check the status of a particular invoice that she worked on that day, she can do so just by clicking the link next to the invoice information. And then finally, on the bottom right-hand side quadrant is the aging work items. And just like it explains, it's all the items that are aging from the oldest to the newest. So Annie does have a little bit of work that she needs to get on and get these items taken care of. So We saw how we processed through Ephesoft the non-PO and the PO invoices, and now I'm going to show you how those invoices are reviewed and approved in workflow. So as I mentioned, my top activities are the items that all things that need to be taken care of. It's really user intuitive. I can just click on the number 2 that shows me I have 2 items to review. Oh, I'm sorry about that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the number 2 item, and it's going to take me directly into the inbox for Annie to look at her documents. And as you can see, these are the 2 invoices that we processed through the Ephesoft technology into workflow. What I want to look at right now is if you look at the top item, you'll see that it's from Adam's office supply, and it's for $630. If we look at the second item, it's for $6,300. So what is the difference here besides the dollar amount is the approval limit and the authority that Annie has to take action on. If I was to click on the $630 invoice, if I want to come down and take an action, I can scroll down and click on actions. And you'll see that Annie has 3 options. She can authorize the invoice, she could reject, and forward. Now we know reject means the invoice doesn't move forward. It's a wrong invoice, needs to be updated. Forward means you forward it to someone else. Maybe Annie wants her manager or someone to just look at for a second set of eyes. But authorized option indicates that Annie has the full approval limit to approve and authorize this invoice for $630. If I was to uncheck the top one and uncheck the bottom one for $6,300, if I go to my actions tab, I will see that she can't authorize this. Yes, she can reject the invoice, she can forward it, but she cannot fully authorize this invoice, meaning the fact is that she can only approve the invoice, and then it will route up to her manager for fully authorization, depending on her manager's approval limit in the system. So let's say, for example, I wanted to go ahead and approve one of these invoices. I've actually gone ahead and already approved it, but I wanted to kind of show it, set the stage. But what I want to do now is I'm going to just check this box and I'm going to click on complete. And it's going to take that invoice directly out and it's pushed it out of my inbox and it's escalated up now to Annie's manager. If I wanted to do the same thing in just an approval status or an authorization status, I can click on this invoice, the one that's for $630. I can come down to the bottom and I can click on authorize. And it tells me right then and there that yes, I authorize it, who authorized it, Annie authorized it, and it even provides me the timestamp. So there is an audit trail with the invoice from the moment it comes in to the minute that it leaves the workflow application. After that, I will come down to the bottom and click on complete. And now you can see Annie doesn't have any items in her to-do section. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to log out as Annie and log in as Annie's manager. Now, first thing you may notice on the right-hand side is I'm logged in as Jay Young. He is the AP manager, Annie's boss. And you may see that he has a little bit more going on his screen. Even on the navigation bar, he has a few more options that he can work with, and that's all role-based. But let's talk about that invoice that was moved up the chain over from Annie to Annie's boss, Jay Young. So if I come to Jay Young's top activities or his to-do section, I can click on that number 1 item to approve, and there is that invoice. I can actually hover over the approval and it tells me exactly when Annie approved it. And then let's say at this point, Jay Young wants to approve this invoice. He can, again, just like how Annie did, click the box left-hand side with the check mark, come down to the action item. And here you can see he actually has the ability to fully authorize this invoice because he has the approval limit since he is the manager. So at this point, I will authorize that invoice. And now, again, in real time, it shows me that the authorization has been done by Jay Young and exactly at what time. And again, at this point, I can come down to my complete section and click complete, and bam, that invoice is out of his inbox. That invoice now has been routed to the ERP system for the payment process to begin. So that was the non-PO side of it. Now I want to show you exactly what we did through when John provided the PO-backed invoice. What I want to do now is, again, for my top activities, I want to go under match review. And the bottom invoice is the one that we just processed. And now you may start thinking, wait a minute, it's sitting in success. It's in successfully matched. But why is it under match review? It's the fact is that we wanted to stage the document and we put an auto stop to show you that not only can we handle two-way, we can handle three-way matches. If I was to actually open this invoice up from a receipt matching perspective, there we go. We could see the invoice on the left-hand side, exactly just how John showed us earlier. And on the left-hand side, we can actually see how the receipt looks. It's all balanced. All the numbers add up, all the quantity, the line items are there. So I just wanted to show you how we can handle two-way and three-way matches when it comes to working with Ephesoft and into the workflow application. And I can just close that out. And I can actually come back to my dashboard. Now, last thing I wanted to show you now is, first of all, we've covered two-way matches, we covered non-PO and three-way matches with the PO back, but I also wanted to show you about the reporting functionality. As I mentioned, since I'm logged in as Jay Young, the manager, he has more authority, he has more roles and responsibilities. So on the navigation bar on the left-hand side, he also has reporting capabilities. Now, just to save some time, I already have the reporting tool up and ready to run. So let's say, for example, your team has a meeting every Monday morning on accruals, and you have that call at 9 a.m. You probably want the latest and greatest data before that call. So when the team goes in, we have the latest data to present. You can actually schedule reports from the workflow application. So as I mentioned, let's say we're looking at the accrual report. I can click on the accrual report and it'll open that up. And on the right-hand side, you can see the button that says subscribe. This is where you can actually subscribe to the report. So let's say I wanted to schedule a report, right? I mentioned that I have a meeting every Monday morning at 9 a.m. So I want the report around 8 o'clock. I can go ahead and create an instance. Let's say test report. I can say, yep, I wanted items reporting. What time do I want it? Let's say I wanted Alaska time. I want it starting on the 25th on the Monday. And like I mentioned, my meeting's at 9, so I want the report a little early before that. And I want the report every week. Not only can I schedule that, I can actually go ahead and look at the delivery as to how would I like it delivered. I would like it via email. How would I like it? Would I like in a link or an attachment? Let's say I want a link. Well, what type of attachment would you like? Would you like PDF, Excel, CSV, multiple options to select from? And then you can go ahead and save that. So every Monday morning at 8 o'clock, you will receive the most latest and greatest report. Now, the beautiful thing about the workflow application, the reporting piece, is the fact is that our team will help you create some reports. We will help you even understand how to do them yourself moving forward, so you are self-sufficient when using the workflow application. So really quickly, I just wanted to show the non-PO, the two-way, three-way matches. I want to show the reporting capabilities, and also want to show you a little bit of the approvals regarding those documents. So what I want to do now is I want to get back into the presentation, and I want to talk about the mobile view. So workflow is also accessible via a smartphone, iPhone, iPad, tablets, you name it. You can take your work with you on the go. A user can view, approve, authorize, and forward documents. So in other words, anything that you could do from a computer or your desktop, you can do from your mobile device on the go. Now, when it comes to reporting, I just want to recap that the reporting capabilities and functionality is in real time. You can schedule your reports so that you have the latest and greatest data prior to those special meetings that you may have. In addition, you can schedule your reports in different file formats, like I mentioned, what was Excel, CSV, PDF, just to name a few. But by providing visibility from the moment the invoice enters until it leaves the workflow application is what we take a lot of pride on. Now, ensuring user adoption. We take this seriously because we want to enhance the end user's experience. So let's say from these examples, Annie received an invoice that she had to review and approve. Well, the user, Annie in this case, would receive an email notification that she needs to take action on. As a reminder, within the email, there is a URL link Annie would just click on that link and it would take her directly into the workflow application where she can approve and authorize, just like I just showed previously. But what that also does, it makes sure that we are staying on top of these approvals and that they're being approved in a timely manner to keep business moving. The benefit is as we move documents through the process, you're also getting payments out on time. You're also strengthening your relationship with your suppliers. And the beautiful thing about the adoption piece is that you can configure reminders and escalations. So if Annie did not approve that, she would receive a reminder. After a few reminders, if she still didn't take any action on it, it would route to her manager, which is Jay Young, as an escalation to keep that document moving through the technology. At this point, I would like to pass it back over to Diane for the completion of the presentation.
Thanks so much, Rayhan. So we went through invoice ingestion as well as invoice processing today, and how it's possible to actually reach zero touch processing, predominantly by automating the different features of a workflow to process the invoice directly from invoice ingestion all the way through to payment. So I hope you saw everything that you're looking for. There was an awful lot of questions, and I do want to get to some of those questions very quickly. Because we had so many people attending, there was more questions than I anticipated. So we're going to go through a few, but I promise everyone that I'll make sure that you get the answers to your questions, and I'll distribute that to everyone so that everyone have shared information. Steve, there was a question for you. Is there any limit to the number of countries that we process invoices in today?
No, Diane, we process invoices in 196 countries today around the world for some of the world's biggest companies. So no real limit. There's a few countries that are embargoed where you're not allowed to trade. So those are the only in the world where we don't process invoices.
Great, thank you. Rayhan, at what point are the transactions viewable and searchable in the workflow process?
Oh, solid question. So the beauty about the workflow is as soon as the invoice comes in, till the invoice goes out, it's all visible. There's an audit trail. Everything is at your fingertips the minute it enters until it leaves the application.
Thank you. And then another one is, someone was asking about the functionality of clicking on complete because they noticed that there was an action to approve as well as authorize. And I can go ahead and answer that. That is the way that the demo system is configured. Typically what happens is that a clerk may not have the authorization rights to have the invoice paid from their authorization. They may be able to approve it, that they were able to do the GL coding and that this invoice is a valid invoice, and then they can approve it, but the authorization is typically someone higher up. So there's two different buttons for that reason. We do have some clients that the way that their business process works is they just want to have the approve button, and we can certainly do that and go through the approvals, and once it's hitting the final approval, will be authorized for payment. So there's some different options there. That just happens to be the demo environment that you saw today. Did you want to add to that, Rayhan?
Oh no, you hit it spot on, right? I mean, the beautiful thing is if the user does not have that level of authority to approve, they will only see the approve option. If the manager has that level of authority to fully take approval action and authorize it, then they will only see the authorized. So there really won't be any kind of confusion.
Yes. The next question I have is, can I have a copy of this webinar recording? And you will have a link that will be sent to you for the webinar recording, so you'll be able to review this after our presentation. So thank you very much. And then also, how does this affect the supplier? What are the disruptions that they will experience? Which is a great question that I love to answer, because it doesn't disrupt the supplier. As a matter of fact, it gives them more power, more capabilities, because now not only will their invoice be received very quickly through the OCR engine, processed very quickly, and processed through your workflow very quickly, they will also have visibility to that invoice, and they'll be able to see the status of the invoice. When was it received? Is it being processed for payment? When will it be paid? All of that information is available for them to see through the portal. So that's a huge advantage for them. And again, it doesn't disrupt business. It doesn't change business for them at all. There's, like I said, there's hundreds of questions that came in, and I apologize. It's a little bit overwhelming actually, but I do appreciate the questions, and I'm going to make sure that I come back and answer all those questions for everyone and try to consolidate them as much as possible. I do want to thank everyone that participated today, both in the audience as well as everyone that was able to speak for us today. And I'm looking forward to following up with everyone in the next week or so. And any additional questions, you can certainly send to me directly, as well as I will make sure that I follow up, and you can ask me any questions at that point too. So thank you everyone for your time today.